Hey, good morning, grade sixes. So today for ELA, what we're doing is, as you've already looked at the assignment, is we're talking about character development in novels, right? Because that's the main reason why we're reading the Hatchet right now, is it's all about how does the character develop, right? So how does the character of Brian change over the course of the actual novel? And what we're going to focus on right now is characterization. And characterization is basically the process on how a writer, it doesn't matter if it's TV or movies or video games or a book, right? All of these art forms, all of these things we engage in, they all have writers, and right, and they reveal the personality of the character, right? And the character traits can tell you about what their personality is, right? So as we can see here, this is different ways we learn about characterization. All right, so their behavior, their appearance, how old they are, their gender, their education, vocation is kind of like their job, right? What they do, what's their purpose on this world. All of those things inform us about who this character is. All right, I know you'll probably watch some TV or something today. I want you to kind of think about what is this character, right? What is unique about their behavior or their appearance that kind of defines who they are? As writers, we reveal characterization through direct characterization and indirect characterization, right? So before we talk about that, this is basically, again, how are they presented? So again, it's in their actions, how they interact with other characters, in their own thoughts. One big thing that they use in books is characters cannot lie to themselves in their own thoughts. Like that, there might be an exception to that, but usually whatever they're thinking to themselves is their reality, is their fact, right? They might lie to other characters, but they won't lie to themselves. Maybe they'll be described directly, right? Or maybe in their dialogue, in their speech. All of these are different ways that when you're looking through the Hatchet, that you get revealed about who Brian is, and either what he does, what he thinks, what he says, or maybe what the author says about him, right? So direct characterization, that's when the author, the writer, actually tells exactly, right, what the personality of the character is. And this is when they use adjectives, right? So here we have a list of adjectives. So an example is the patient boy and quiet girl were both well-mannered and did not disobey their mother. So the author is actually telling us the boy is patient, the girl is quiet, they are well-mannered. Right? Nothing's happening, but the author is giving us this narrative. That's direct characterization. Indirect, though, is when it kind of, and this is the one that's harder to find, and this is the one where you might need to look a little bit more for in the Hatchet, right? So it reveals information about the character's personalities, and this is usually what they do. Think verbs, right? So in their speech, right, what does the character say? How does the character speak? Thoughts. What is revealed through the character's private thoughts and feelings? They will reveal information about themselves. Their effect on others toward the character. So again, how do they interact with other characters? Actions, what did they do? All right, so for Brian, he does a lot of, even in chapter 8 already. What are some things he does that kind of gives him some character traits? Does he panic? Does he keep a level head? Does he reflect about the past? Right, and then obviously there's also then his looks. Right, so you have direct and you have indirect. They're two very different ways that we get revealed who the character actually is. What we're going to do is we're going to play this clip. I hope it works. If it doesn't, just click on it in the slide. This is from the movie Moana, right? It's where you meet the character of Maui for the first time. And I know you've already seen it, and you probably know how it ends. But I want you just to think about. I want you to think about how would you describe Maui just based solely on this interaction, right? How would you describe his personality? And then what are some direct or indirect? In this case, it's a movie, so it'd be indirect, right? Characterization that you can use to actually describe his personality.
I said help me! And wrecking my boat? Not coming! Fish pee in you all day! So...
Maui shapeshifter, demigod of the wind and sea, hero of men. I interrupted from the top. Hero of men. Go.
I am
Sorry. And women. Men and women. Both. All. Not a guy-girl thing. Maui is a hero to all. You're doing great.
No, I'm here
Oh,
to...
of course. Yes. Maui always has time for his fans. You use a bird to write with. It's called tweeting. Huh? I know, not every day you get a chance to meet your hero.
You are not my hero, and I'm not here so you can sign my oar. I'm here because you stole the heart of Tefiti. You will board my boat, sail across the sea, and put it back.
Yeah. It almost sounded like you don't like me, which is impossible because I got stuck here for 1,000 years trying to get the heart as a gift for you mortals, so you can have the power to create life itself. Yeah, so what I believe you were trying to say is thank you.
Thank you?
You're welcome.
What? No.
Okay, so on that brief scene, right, it revealed a lot about the personality of Maui. Right now, after that, he goes into a song about how he actually says, like, thank you. And then again, that reveals a lot more of his character. But right away, I think we can kind of think about this, right? How would you describe his personality? Some ways I would describe it, right, maybe as selfish, right? Because he talks mostly about himself, right? In his words, he talks a lot about himself and what he's done for other people. Right? Maybe you can talk about how he's full of himself, right? Because he's always and he thinks himself bigger than, more important than Moana because he keeps interrupting her. But what we're doing is we're using his words and we're using his actions to prove that that's what the writers thought about his character. Good writers have clearly defined characters, right? And they define them at the very beginning. So this is the very beginning of the movie, or the first time you meet Maui. What happens is then over the course of the show, right, they develop, right? The character develops. So what you need to have is you need to have a clearly defined character at the beginning who undergoes some sort of change. We find this as a good example of this in T'Challa in the Marvel universe, right? In the Black Panther. Okay. So again, you want your characters to be interesting, you want them to be engaging, you want them to be relatable, which means they have to go through changes. There's nothing more frustrating than just having a character who is one way at the beginning and stays that way, right? Especially if they're the main character. That's called the protagonist, right? The main character of a book or a TV series. You want them to undergo some kind of change, right? So in Black Panther, T'Challa goes from wanting to isolate Wakanda so he can protect their way of life to being more willing to use their technology to make the world a better place. So some characterization. So at the very beginning, right, at the beginning his belief was that Wakanda should hide and protect their technology. The action that proves this is that they worked really hard at the beginning of the movie to keep it a secret, right? They had the force field, they had spies, they had a lot of kind of stuff. No one knew anything about Wakanda, right? And you can tell that by the way Wakandans acted around other people, but also how they kind of hid themselves when they said that, right? So that's the beginning. So we have a belief, right? A personality trait, and an action that proves it. In the middle, though, as a king, he doubts some of the actions his father took. So in the middle, he started to have more questions about what his father did, about keeping it secret. So then he starts questioning the council and takes on Killmonger's challenge, right? So then Killmonger actually, in the middle, makes him really question all of these things. So you start seeing this change in his personality. And at the end, he decides Wakanda should share their technology to help other nations. And you can see this because he opens up ambassador centers in poor neighborhoods, but he also opens up and announces this kind of almost Tony Stark style to the entire UN, right? So from the beginning to the end, his personality changes, but you can also still find evidence of how and why his personality changes in the movie. And that idea of evidence is equally important. And that's what we're doing for the rest of this class for sure, right? Is you are going to define who Brian is right now. Chapter 1 to chapter 8 at the beginning of this book. All right? So you're going to find some character traits, some evidence first before you kind of summarize who you think Brian is. So what you have is you have some 3 thoughts, 3 feelings, and 3 actions. Okay? You need to have a couple sentences of 3 things, 3 examples of kind of how he thinks, how he feels, and what he does. So for example, these are the examples I gave you. Brian took control of the plane after the pilot had a heart attack. So that'd be one of his actions, right? You don't need to look into it. You don't have to analyze it. You're just putting down things that he's done. I want you to find the chapter number and the page number, all right? For feelings, the same thing. Brian, at one point, I found he felt hopeful, right? In chapter 5, he felt hopeful that someone would find him and soon take him home, all right? And that was on page 21. So again, I did that for 1 time for thoughts, 1 time for actions. You need to do it 3 times for thoughts, 3 times for feelings, and 3 times for actions. Once you have all of your evidence gathered of kind of what Brian has done from chapter 1 to chapter 8, you're going to analyze Brian's, you're going to assess and assign a trait that describes him, right? So if you could describe Brian so far in 1 word, all right, what would it be? And you're going to write that trait down here. And then, using your evidence from this section, you're going to say why, right? So maybe based on my evidence here, right, I'm going to say that Brian is resourceful. That's my character trait, right? Because he's able to take control of the plane and he's able to have some hope, right? But what I have to do is I have to write a paragraph saying, these are the reasons why Brian is considered hopeful, all right? So again, what we're doing is we're defining the character now, so then once we start reading, by the end of the book, we can say, I understand how he developed and how he changed, and that makes it an even more interesting of a book. If you have any questions, message me, but please, I can see when you guys watch these videos all the way through, and I think I did a pretty decent job of explaining it, so watch these through, and then ask me a specific question if you need any help. Alright, so remember, this will be due next Sunday, so get her done.